Picture yourself 400 feet underneath the ocean in a steel tube that's no wider than a school bus. It's just you, the crew, and a light bulb. The light bulb goes out, and the next thing you know, alarms are blaring, people are screaming, and you can't see your hand in front of your face because of the smoke. The oxygen that used to give you life is now trying to take it away. Stick around for my story about the USS Bonefish. The Bonefish was launched in 1958. That's the same year I was born. This is a great picture. This is the USS Bonefish coming into New York City. And the year is 1986. And we're going up there for a thing called Fleet Week. So it starts off with an aircraft carrier, and then there's 30 ships. And guess who the caboose was? That's right, the Bonefish. We're in the back. But here we are going under some bridge, and there's the crew standing up there. See that guy fourth from the left? I think that's me. But I was on board at that time for Fleet Week when the Bonefish got to go to New York City. I reported to the USS Bonefish in 1984. Now you got to remember something. I spent many years attached to submarines, 14 years. That doesn't mean 14 years underwater, but it means 14 years. And every time I went to sea, my mom was never concerned until I reported to the USS Bonefish. Every time I went to sea, she didn't know if I was going to come home. And to be honest with you, I didn't know if I was going to come home. It was so old, and it was like the last or one of the last diesel submarines in the fleet. Everybody else was a nuke. Everybody else was being maintained and taken care of. There wasn't a whole lot of maintenance and being taken care of with a little Bonefish. And the funny thing about it is, we were using it all the time because we wanted to play with it at sea to try to pretend to find other submarines just like it. It was a little boat. You know, these submarines I've been talking about recently, they're like 600 feet long. Bonefish was 219 feet long. And it was a little crew. There's about 88 people, maybe 90. And it was tough duty. It was always underway. I left the Bonefish in 1987 and reported to Kings Bay, Georgia. Bonefish was stationed in Charleston. Now, back when I was on board this ship, I made a lot of good friends, and I had to train a lot of people. And I remember training this one guy, and I said, Kelly, if you ever fear for your life on board this ship, if something goes down, bring it up. Don't wait for someone to tell you. Grab those big switches, throw them in the overhead, and blow all that water out of those tanks and get that ship on the surface if something goes down. Because sometimes when it goes down, people panic. And that few extra seconds for somebody to get it together could be the difference between life and death, and anybody surviving and nobody coming home, or everybody coming home. So do it. You know what? If somebody tells you you're wrong, you can talk about it on the surface. Yeah. I'm watching the news, CBS Evening News, with Dan Rather. And he says, there's a submarine burning on top of the ocean 160 miles off the coast of Florida. And it's my boat. It's the Bonefish. And I see the smoke coming out of the top of the sail, and I see the guys scrambling. And it's horrible. I'm horrified. I just left 67 days before this happened. I called my best friend. They had six people TAD. In other words, they didn't go to sea on the Bonefish that time. They were in for school or they were on leave or something. And one of them was one of my best friends, Sam Woolley. And I called Sam. And he was at the crisis center with all the families. And all I could hear in the background was screaming and babies crying because nobody knew if their husband was alive or not. None of that news had gotten out yet. And he said, RJ, I'll call you later. Gosh, can you imagine? We've got some pictures to show you. But before I show you the pictures, when they brought the Bonefish home, April 25th, they towed it back into Charleston. And it's sitting next to the pier. Now remember, after they got the crew off, they closed the hatches and it burned inside. It got 1,200 degrees inside there. It was so hot inside that submarine that it boiled the water around the ocean, around the boat. The water was boiling. So I went up to Charleston. A couple of weeks later, I said, I got to see it. I got to see the boat. I went on the pier, and they had a tent and a few sailors in it. And I said, what's going on? You guys, oh, it's good to see you. I said, yeah, I want to see the boat. I said, okay, well, you got to put on this white paper suit. You can go down. I'm like, okay. I put on the white paper suit and went down to the submarine. These pictures that you're about to see, I don't know who else has them. I'm sure they're out there, but I've never seen them before. And to tell you the truth, I don't even know how I got them, but I wanted you to see what it looks like. Can you imagine being under there? Huh? Put yourself in those guys' place. That picture right there is a bunch of little fuse holders that go into the wall. You see them dripping? That's like wax. That's the heat. That's what the heat did to those fuse holders. This is where you drove the submarine from. That's what it looked like when I went on board. You could see there to the right, that big circle-looking thing, that tells you an angle. And that used to have a wall right there, but that wall's been ripped out because they were trying to fight the fire from behind that wall. That's the kitchen. That's the galley. There's something in the back that takes care of the garbage, which turned out to be part of the problem. That's the torpedo room. Now, it's not too bad in there, but there's a lot of damage. You can see some melted stuff right there. The torpedo room of the USS Bonefish. Remember, these are after the fire. Here's some more damage. You can just imagine the heat and the confusion. When this fire breaks out, you can't see your hand in front of your face. And I remember the captain at the time, when he did go around and give lectures, they said, you know what, sir? You were lucky to lose only 3 people because we did lose 3. And he looked those people in the crowd and he said, let me tell you something. Luck had nothing to do with it. Training saved those men's lives. That's the hatch. That's how you get out. There are 3 hatches so you can get out. And once they finally got the bridge hatch open, the engine room hatch got open and people got out too. This is the yeoman shack. This is where we lost one of our guys. See the keyboard? That's where he did his paperwork. He didn't make it. More of the ship's control panel where we drive it from. It's all black. There's no colors in the submarine anymore. It's just black and white and gray. It's all burned up. And this is my rack. I'm on the right-hand side of this picture. Right below the top rack is my rack. I was just sleeping there a couple of months before this. Here's the guys. They're on board. They've been sent to the USS Carr, and now they're being medevaced to the John F. Kennedy. There was a lot of lung problems, a lot of smoke inhalation, a lot of chemicals. A lot of them are no longer with us. And I'm sure this had something to do with it. There's a guy getting some oxygen and getting tended to. They're trying to get back to Charleston after this and see their families. There it is. There's the USS Bonefish on fire, 160 miles off the coast of Florida. The ship behind them is the USS Carr, and that's the Carr's helicopter coming over to pluck the guys off the top of the submarine and bring them back to safety. Hoorah to the USS Carr, let me tell you. You know, when they decommission a submarine, they give the list of all the people on the crew for the decommissioning. There's the actual list of the guys that were the Bonefish final crew. And here is the plan of the day. Take a look at the plan of the day. April 24th, 1988. That's the day of the fire. At 12 o'clock, they were eating beef stroganoff. 2 hours later, 2 hours before dinner, that's when the fire broke out, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. It's an interesting thing to look at that plan of the day. It says there were 88 enlisted, 93 on board. That means there was only 4 officers, so there's something goofy with that number, but anyway, we'll work that out. I think one of the things I like about the plan of the day, the first note says, make sure that you give your list of all the gauges that got to be calibrated to Petty Officer Warren before the 25th of April. There really was no 25th of April for the Bonefish. Those guys were in hospitals or on ships headed home. That's the final plan of the day. It's signed by the XO, Lieutenant Commander Lestrange, great guy. Really interesting to see that thing. You don't normally see that thing. I've never seen it before. It took a little while to get it. I'm sure they remained pretty calm, but I'm sure they were freaking out. See, what happened was the battery caught fire. They had a ground in the battery. Now, this is not the battery in your car. Picture a battery 6 foot high, 2 feet by 2 feet. That's one cell. It had over 200 of these batteries. This is huge. Anybody out there ever seen a battery blow up? Yeah, picture this one blowing up. Instant blackness in front of your face. People better do the right thing as quickly as possible or nobody makes it out. Nobody makes it out. It's sad we lost 3, but it's great we got 89 home. You know, some of them went back to submarines, most of them did not. I know a friend of mine, he went back. He says, I'm gonna try it. And they took him to sea, and they closed that hatch, and they submerged that submarine, and he just started screaming. They surfaced that submarine and let him off, and he never went back to them again. It's not easy being a submariner. You're always this close to something. You better know what you're doing. You better know what you're doing or everybody goes. And that's why the qualification process is so steep. People know what they're doing. And they did the right thing as much as humanly possible when Bonefish caught fire. They tried to put it out, recognized that it was not going to go out, surfaced as quickly as possible, and tried to get a hatch open. Unfortunately, opening it all the way shut it a little bit. And you had to know the trick. And so the first guy up there didn't know the trick. So he opened it all the way and he's pushing, he's pushing, he's pushing. Now this hatch is like a bank vault. You're not gonna open it if it's a billionth of an inch shut. He succumbed to the smoke. We lost him. And then somebody did get the hatch open. And the guys came scurrying out of the sail. It was like being in a chimney. Imagine being in a chimney, scurrying up a chimney to get out. Now when you finally do get out the top, there's still smoke coming out. You gotta lean over the side to get a breath. Lucky for these guys, Bonefish had rungs, kind of like a ladder on the side of the sail. So you could climb down the sail, go to the wings that are on top of there, then climb down another little ladder and be on the top side. But it was a pretty rough day that day, 10-foot waves. Many of them got washed over the side. So there you are. You've been breathing smoke for X amount of minutes, and now you're in the ocean, coughing and hacking. Whew. Way to go, Carr. Way to go, USS Carr. But I put on my white suit and went down below to take a look at it, and that's what those pictures were that you saw. And there were no lights. They had these things called shipyard lights. So it's like a light bulb, 10 feet, a light bulb, 10 feet, a light bulb, and that's how they lit up the submarine in the 3 levels. And I walked the whole ship, and I cried. It was tough. Still tough to this day. I still got some good friends on that boat. I keep in touch with them. I keep in touch with Sam Woolley. I remember I come topside and I went over to the little tent where the guys were, and I said, "So what is your job? What do you guys do?" They said, "Well, every 6 hours, we're supposed to go down there and make sure nothing's leaking or nothing weird's happening. We got to check the bilges and write down the level." I said, "Oh." I said, "When do you go down there?" They go, "Well, we got a noon and we got a 6 o'clock and we got a mid-watch." And the guy looked at me and says, "Nobody goes down at midnight. We never go down at midnight." We decommissioned it a couple of months later, and we sold it for scrap. I don't know, you could be shaving with it. I was proud to be a Bonefish sailor. I know everybody out there. They served on those boats. Proud to be them. Used to call them diesel boats forever. Well, forever ended in 1988, April 24th, 4 o'clock in the afternoon.